Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into something that I think a lot of us can relate to: high sensitivity.
Yeah, high sensitivity. It's one of those things, that gets talked about a lot, but I feel like there's still so many misconceptions floating around out there.
Totally. And that's why we're here. We're going to unpack all of that, and we're going straight to the source. Elaine and Aron's book, The Highly Sensitive Person. This book, seriously changed the game for so many people.
It's like a must read for anyone who's ever felt like they experienced the world a little bit differently. You know what I mean?
For sure. So, if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by, a noisy restaurant or just a ton of people around, or maybe you're just really deeply connect with art and music and notice things that other people don't.
Yeah.
Well, you might just be highly sensitive.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
That's what's so important to understand. High sensitivity is not a disorder. It's not a weakness. It's actually a perfectly normal trait.
Okay, so right off the bat, let's just clear that up. We're not talking about being sensitive in the way people usually use that word.
Right. It's not about being easily offended or overreacting to things. It's much deeper than that.
So what is it then? What's actually going on?
Basically, HSPs, so we call them, highly sensitive people, they just have a nervous system that's wired a little bit differently.
Okay, so their brains are different?
Kind of. I mean, everyone's brain is unique, but with HSPs, their nervous systems are just more reactive. So they process information more deeply and, more thoroughly than non-HSPs.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah. And because of that, they tend to have stronger reactions both physically and emotionally to the things happening around them.
So it's everything is just turned up a notch, the volume's louder, the colors are brighter, the feels are feelier.
Exactly. It's like they're experiencing the world in high definition, And like we were saying earlier, that can be both, a really amazing thing and a bit of a challenge sometimes.
For sure, I can see that. So if you're constantly taking in all this extra information and processing everything so deeply.
It's going to have a big impact on how you see the world and how you interact with it.
Right. Which is why I guess HSPs are often described as being super insightful and empathetic.
Absolutely. Because they're so tuned into everything, they're able to pick up on subtle cues that other people might miss entirely. Like they might notice a slight change in someone's facial expression or a subtle shift in the tone of voice, things like that.
I guess that's why a lot of HSPs are drawn to creative fields, right? They're artists, writers, musicians, people who are really in touch with their emotions and can express them in such powerful ways.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That depth of processing, that sensitivity, it can be like a wellspring of creativity.
Totally. But, Aron also talks about the other side of the coin, the challenges that come with being highly sensitive.
Yeah, and that's something that's really important to address.
Because it's not always easy, right? The same sensitivity that makes you super attuned to beauty and emotions can also make you more susceptible to feeling overwhelmed and stressed.
Exactly. It's like having a more sensitive alarm system.
Yeah.
Things that might not bother other people can feel really intense for an HSP, like loud noises, bright lights, crowded places.
Even just a lot of social interaction. Sometimes I feel I need a week to recover after a party.
I get it. HSPs often need more downtime than non-HSPs to process and recharge. And that's okay. It's not a sign of weakness. It's just how they're wired.
Yeah, it's so easy to fall into that trap of thinking, oh, I'm just being too sensitive.
Right. And that's where the misunderstanding comes in. People who aren't highly sensitive might not understand why certain things are so difficult for HSPs. They might see it as being dramatic or overreacting.
When really it's just a completely different way of experiencing the world.
Exactly. It's not about being too much or not enough. It's about recognizing that everyone experiences the world differently and honoring those differences.
Yeah. And that's what makes Aron's work so important, right? It's she gave a voice to so many people who felt like they didn't fit in.
She totally did.
Yeah.
And she helped them understand that their sensitivity is not a flaw, it's a strength.
Yeah, I love that. It's about reframing sensitivity as a superpower. And that's what we're going to dive into next.
I'm excited to get into that.
Yeah.
Because there are so many amazing things about being an HSP.
It's true. Once you understand how your sensitivity works, you can start to use it to your advantage.
It's all about learning how to thrive as an HSP.
And that's what we're going to unpack next. Stay tuned. So, we were just talking about how HSPs process information so deeply and really think things through.
Yeah, they're definitely not afraid to dive deep.
Right, they're the ultimate overthinkers in a good way.
I like that. Overthinkers in a good way. It's true, though. They're always considering all the angles, all the possibilities.
Which is why I guess they're often described as being like really conscientious.
Oh, for sure. HSPs tend to be very aware of like the impact their actions have on other people. Yeah.
Right, like they're always thinking about the consequences of their choices.
Exactly. It's almost like they have this built-in ethical compass.
I can see that. So that makes a lot of sense in the context of relationships, too.
Oh, absolutely. Relationships are a whole other layer when it comes to high sensitivity.
Yeah, because, like, if you're so tuned in to emotions, both your own and other people's,
Conflict can be really tough.
that's what I was thinking. Like, even just a little disagreement can feel like a huge deal.
It can feel like a threat to their whole sense of, like, harmony and well-being.
Right, and so they might avoid conflict altogether.
Yeah, or they might just, like, give in, even if they don't really agree with what's happening.
Oh, I totally do that, just to, like, keep the peace.
It's a calming pattern for HSPs. But, Aron talks about how important it is for HSPs to find partners who understand this about them.
Like partners who can handle their intensity.
Yes, partners who can listen without judgment and create a space where they feel safe to express themselves fully.
Because that's so important, right? Feeling like you can be your true self without being judged or criticized.
It's essential for anyone, but especially for HSPs.
And I guess that goes for all kinds of relationships, right? Friendships, family, work relationships.
Totally. It's all about finding your people, the ones who get you, the ones who appreciate your sensitivity and don't see it as a weakness.
Yeah, that's so important. Speaking of work, I'm curious about, like, what kind of work environments are best suited for HSPs?
Well, I think it really depends on the individual, of course.
Right, of course.
But in general, HSPs tend to do well in environments that are, like, more low-key,
Like not super chaotic and high pressure all the time.
Exactly. They need space to think and process and, just kind of be in their own heads a little bit.
I can see that. So like a job where they're constantly bombarded with stimuli, like a busy open plan office.
Yeah, that could be really overwhelming for an HSP.
Yeah.
They might find it hard to focus and get their work done.
Okay, so what kind of jobs would be a good fit then?
Well, HSPs often thrive in careers where they can use their strengths, their empathy, their creativity, their problem-solving skills.
So like what, give me some examples.
Okay, so like a lot of HSPs are drawn to fields like writing, counseling, teaching, things like that.
Those make sense. Jobs where they can really connect with people on a deeper level.
Exactly. And jobs that allow them to use their intuition and their insight.
It's like they're able to see things that other people don't.
They're the deep thinkers, remember?
Uh-huh. That's right.
But, it's not just about the job itself, it's also about the work environment.
Right, like even if it's a job they love, if the environment is toxic or stressful.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for them to thrive.
So it's about finding a place where they feel supported and understood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And where they have some control over their workload and their schedule.
Okay, so it sounds like HSPs can really be successful in any field, as long as they're mindful of their needs and set boundaries.
100%. And, Aron also talks about how important it is for HSPs to find work that aligns with their values, work that gives them a sense of purpose and meaning.
Because if you're passionate about what you're doing,
It makes it easier to handle the challenges, right?
passion can be like a superpower in itself.
Totally. And, we've been talking a lot about how sensitivity can be a strength, but
But there's still like this stigma, right? Especially for men.
unfortunately, yeah, there's still this idea that men shouldn't be too sensitive,
Like they have to be tough and stoic all the time.
It's such a limiting belief. And it can be really damaging for HSP men who feel like they have to hide their true selves.
I can imagine. It's like they're constantly having to suppress their emotions and pretend to be someone they're not.
It's exhausting.
Hmm.
And it can lead to all sorts of problems like anxiety and depression.
So it's even more important for HSP men to find those safe spaces where they can just be themselves.
Absolutely. Where they can connect with other HSPs and realize that they're not alone.
Yeah.
That their sensitivity is a gift, not a curse.
Yeah. And that there are other people out there who understand what it's like to experience the world in this way.
It's like finding your tribe, and it can be incredibly healing.
Okay, so we've talked about relationships, we talked about work, but like, what about everyday life? What are some things HSPs can do to manage their sensitivity on a daily basis? Like practical tips and stuff.
I love that you asked that
Yeah.
because there are so many things HSPs can do to make their lives a little bit easier, a little bit more enjoyable.
I'm all ears.
All right, so first things first, routine.
Routine. Okay, I'm not always the best at that, but I'm willing to try.
I think routine is super helpful for HSPs. It creates a sense of predictability and stability, which can help reduce anxiety and overwhelm.
That makes sense. Like if you know what to expect, it's less likely to throw you off balance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, like having a morning routine, even if it's just like 15 minutes, can make a huge difference.
Okay. Yeah, that's doable. What else?
Boundaries for sure.
Yeah, boundaries. That's a big one. Always a work in progress for me.
It's so important for HSPs though, because they can get easily overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's like you said earlier, HSPs have that sensitive alarm system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, learning to say no to things, to protect their energy, to not take on too much.
And not feel guilty about it.
Yes. No guilt allowed.
It's like you have to give yourself permission to prioritize your own well-being, even if it means like disappointing someone else.
Exactly. And that's where self-care comes in.
Self-care, yes. That's not just like bubble baths and face masks.
Right.
Okay.
It's about like really taking care of your mental and emotional health.
So what are some self-care practices that work well for HSPs?
Well, like anything, it depends on the person. But a lot of HSPs find that spending time in nature is really grounding and restorative.
Oh, yeah, I feel that. Just like a walk in the park can totally change my mood.
It's like nature has this calming effect on the nervous system.
It's true. Okay, so nature, boundaries, routine. What else?
Mindfulness can be really helpful too. Like meditation, deep breathing exercises, things like that.
Oh, I've been meaning to try meditation. Does it really work?
It can be super helpful for HSPs because it helps them like calm their minds and manage their stress levels.
Okay. I'm adding that to my list. What about like those times when you're just stuck in a situation that's overstimulating? Like a loud concert or a crowded party.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
What do you do in those moments?
It's good to have some strategies in place. Like some people find that noise-canceling headphones are a lifesaver, or even just like regular earplugs.
Yeah, those are good.
And sometimes, you just need to step away for a few minutes.
It's like take a break from all the stimulation.
Exactly. Go to the bathroom, step outside, find a quiet corner.
Yeah, that can make a big difference. It's like giving your nervous system a chance to reset.
Exactly. And speaking of like resetting, have you ever tried creative expression as a form of self-care?
Ooh, creative expression. I like that. Like what, painting, writing, music?
Yeah, all of that. Whatever you enjoy, it's not about being like amazing at it. It's just about expressing yourself,
Yeah.
letting those feelings out.
Yeah, I get that. It's like a way to process your emotions and make sense of the world.
And it can be super therapeutic for HSPs.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the science behind high sensitivity, the challenges, the strengths.
The superpowers.
Yes, the superpowers. And, most importantly, how to thrive as an HSP.
It's all about self-awareness, self-acceptance, and finding what works for you.
I love that. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, hey, I think I might be highly sensitive.
Embrace it.
Yeah, don't be afraid of it. It's not a weakness, it's a gift.
It's a way of experiencing the world with more depth, more compassion, more beauty.
Beautifully said. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thank you so much for listening. And a huge thank you to you for sharing all of your wisdom and insights. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
And to all of our listeners, remember to keep exploring, keep growing, and keep shining your unique light.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, and see you soon in my next video. Bye.